around.
No.
Alright. It is 6 o'clock, we will call the meeting to order.
Brett,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Renee. Yes.
Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's a copy of the Open Meetings Act on the wall, if you so choose to look it over. Number 3, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda without any amendments?
So moved.
Any discussion? Alyssa?
Alex,
Yes.
Renee. Yes. Brett,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di.
Yes.
3.1, board minutes from the April meeting. Any changes or amendments that need to be made? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Alyssa?
Alex,
Yes.
Renee.
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di.
Yes.
3.2 claims. There's not any law, and I don't believe there's anything else that would apply.
I've got Nate Furman's in the
How we
claims,
did
yeah.
last time?
I abstain, I'll
I did.
abstain.
Okay. Gotcha.
Carmen Sullivan,
Okay.
Couldn't remember how we did that, so.
yeah.
Is there a motion to approve all the claims with the exception of the Carmen Sullivan claim?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Is there a discussion? Alyssa?
Renee.
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the Carmen Sullivan claim?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Alyssa?
Alex,
Yes.
Renee.
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Bob,
Abstain.
Mike,
Yes.
Di.
Yes.
Moving on to informational items. 4.1, strategic planning with NASB and Mrs. Marshall.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it more than you know. So what I would like to do is have the opportunity to walk you, the board, through our process, really. Where were we? Where are we? The one thing that I do want to point out is think back to superintendent evaluation. One of the identified areas of need, goal, that was identified in that superintendent evaluation was the need for a strategic plan. So it was really realized from that work, a priority identified as the board. And for that I commend you as a board. It develops that vision. Strategic planning is one of those things that it's not for the faint of heart. It pulls back the veil and we look at what are the areas of growth, improvement, priority needs that we have in our school district. And that's really what we take your district through. So the one thing that I wanted to first and foremost share with you and revisit is what was our process. And so something that's very, very unique about the School Boards Association, different than most processes, is the vast amount of engagement that we provide our client, if you will, the school district. And so breaking it down, most all of our engagement is through an online survey, through Qualtrics is what we utilize for our survey process. And then we do have in-district meetings that we did carry out. One was a strategic overview committee, which is made up of all of the stakeholders that we have listed there, looking at your mission statement, vision statement, values, different things of that nature. Completing rather than a SWOT analysis, the Strategic Overview Committee completed as strengths, opportunities, and challenges as opposed to the SWOT analysis. All of that content then is brought and compiled into a needs analysis. But just for the sake of, just notice we have target rates, and we're very, very hard to ensure that we're meeting those target rates to give you valid data, or we receive valid data to be able to identify priorities and needs. Sorry about that. I was a little behind. And then this next slide, the Strategic Overview Committee, as I mentioned, we look at the mission statements, vision statements. What we brought before from that SOC committee, what we tell them is we're looking for their feedback. They may modify, edit, change, but ultimately we provide those proposed statements to your administration and to the Board of Education for you to identify what is right, what is our mission statement, how does it describe who we are. And so we brought forward 2 different proposed mission statements. It isn't unusual that a mission statement will also be reviewed through your external visit, your school improvement, continuous improvement process. Okay, 10 guiding principles that the School Boards Association will align to when they design a strategic plan. All grounded very educationally in Marzano instructional, Danielson instructional, AQuest tenets, etc. But it's looking at how you are looking at your overall system of education and what you're providing both staff and students. So what we will do is ultimately we're writing a plan that covers all of these guiding principles, but we're narrowing that focus to 3 priorities, 2 focused specifically on the school district, and 1 focused on you, the board, your governance role. Go on. Again, this is the content that we bring, the process that we go through, our strategic overview, engagement, our community engagement, where we had a community meeting and we engaged the community on questions that were identified by your district. That feedback is integrated into the plan. Our online surveys, and then we do an extensive amount of extant data research to identify, just put our finger on the pulse of where is Wahoo Public Schools. And next. These are going to be our priority areas. I'm going to break these down for you in the next forthcoming slides. But ultimately, where we landed is student-centered learning environment. That is the #1 priority. We're going to break that down. It leans into truly the student, but how our staff is responding to the needs of our students. Cultural inclusion engagement, you have that growing population of ELL. How are we responding to that? How are we preparing staff to be able to work with these students? More importantly, how are we positioning those students for success? District resources, always important how you're aligning your resources, limited resources. I always want to circle back on district resources. What is the percentage of your budget in Wahoo Public Schools that is just staffing before you start looking at any other expenditures?
It's 80 to 85% on a yearly
80
basis.
to 85%. So even if we say 85%, that means that we have that near 15% that we're able to devote to other expenditures.
Across the state, what's your experience with districts and that number? Is it 80 to 90 usually?
It is. It's staggering in some districts how high in the 80th percentile that it actually is. But I always want boards to be cognizant of that, that you take that off the top first and foremost to pay staff, but then how do we keep the lights on and all the other priorities that we identify. So very important that we remain cognizant of that. But aligning your available resources to those priorities is naturally what you're doing through professional development, etc. And then ultimately, as I said, Board governance is going to come into play here. So let's break this down.
Can we,
Yes, please.
how did we arrive at those four? Who decided those four?
Okay, so what we do, Renee, is all of the data that I described to you, so all of the surveys that we distributed, the community meeting and the strategic overview committee, we take all of that data and analyze that. So let me describe for you the surveys that we utilize with your administrators, your principals, district level administrators, and superintendent. It's the very same survey that we're utilizing with your teachers. So what that does is it equips us with both quantifiable but quantitative data to understand. Oftentimes we'll hear administration say, yes, we're checking the box. We have this, this, and this. But maybe staff's not on that same page. So there we're identifying this may be a key point that needs to further exploration. Example, in our surveys, Likert scale questions, which is going to be strongly disagree to strongly agree. Easy, graphed out, here's where our administration is at, here's where our staff is at. And then we have open-ended questions. When we have an open-ended question where a staff member, whether it be an administrator or a teacher, has the opportunity to give narrative content, we actually go through those, Renee, and we code them. We also assure both administration, anyone that participates in a survey through the School Boards Association is assured complete confidentiality. So if let's say that an administrator responds to a narrative question, an open-ended question, and there is a paragraph of dialogue and they hit upon 3 points: professional development, student behaviors, and use of technology, or whatever the case may be, it is coded as such. So we go through that content. It is not just, well, that's great, we got this information. Wahoo is excise school district, we should expect that this is what their needs are going to be. No, all of that data that we're collecting is analyzed by a team, not by one individual. For example, myself. What do I know about Wahoo? How does that influence? No, we're looking at your data. And then what we do is that goes into a needs analysis, and it's from that needs analysis that the team will sit around a table and talk about, this is what I believe surfaced as being priorities. Do we agree? Do we disagree? And then isolating that to what we believe truly are those needs based upon your data. And then we are developing then the framework. That's how we arrive at that.
Who's the we?
Who is the we? I have, there's 8 of us on the board leadership team. We are made up of 7 of us. 2 have had, 1 has had her teacher's certificate. She no longer has a viable certificate. She is a school board member in Nebraska City. Has been on the board shy of 20 years. Another school board member, Stephanie Summers, she's a school board member currently in David City, and she has her teaching certificate and substitute teaches in David City. She is currently working on her doctorate in superintendent evaluation. Caden Frank is our community engagement, community alignment specialist. He has his master's degree in community engagement out of Fort Hays, Kansas. He does a lot of the community, he facilitates the community meetings. He was actually, everyone that I'm describing to you, with exception to Stacy, they were here in your district working in the community meetings. In addition, Ben Andrzejewska graduated from UNL a year ago. He's been on staff now a year and a half. He works on administering surveys, reading, assessing the results, coding data, He works in community engagement and alignment with Caden as well. And then Becky Erdkamp, she is, her prior experience, she was at the Forestry Service at UNL, writes grants. She is also working in the area of looking at data based upon our criteria that we utilize. She does a lot of our coding. And then Avery Pansing Brooks, she also works in the area of strategic planning and is coding. All of them except Becky. Becky may have been here. I can't speak to it because I was either sick or, I don't even remember. I was sick and I couldn't be here. But they were all here. And so there's 7 of us in addition to myself. I'm actually the one that designed our strategic planning process. I've been with the School Boards Association, I'm in my 19th year, it'll be 20 years in January. We continue to modify and improve our process. It is very educationally based. We work with accreditation department at NDE. We have allowed the SEED department, which is going to be teacher evaluation and principal evaluation, staff Dr. Ryan Rickenbaugh. He's had an opportunity to look at our surveys, qualified our surveys, if you will. We have been in this process of providing strategic planning. It dates back to our work with, our first was Norris Public Schools. We have worked with districts as large as Bellevue and Kearney to Bayard and all around that, but anywhere and in between.
And Marcia, I'm not challenging the process or the
Okay.
validity. I'm just trying to understand a few things. One, we have not seen any of the data,
Uh-huh.
the underlying data, and
Right.
it seems like that would be something that the board
Mhm.
should see. And then I'm trying to understand, do you tell us what our priorities need to be? I trust we have input into the process. It just seems like there should have been a
Absolutely
working
do.
session with the board to review the data and say,
Mhm.
this is what we're seeing. It feels like this is being presented to us as, this is what your priorities need to be.
Okay.
And that part just feels off a little bit when we can't see any underlying data.
Uh-huh.
We just get a plan that says this is what it needs to be.
So our typical process would be that we're presenting in the fashion that I am here, but we also have the opportunity, if you have interest, I have no problem taking you through the needs analysis, which is what we presented to your administrators. The needs analysis is truly a compilation of all of the data. We present that, and the way that we do it is we present that needs analysis to superintendent, all administrators, and your school improvement team. Because another thing that we are doing is we're aligning your framework, your strategic plan, we're integrating your school improvement goals into that. And so then what we do is we presented that, we turned that over to administration in a meeting. We went through the same PowerPoint that I'm presenting to you, other than we did have a needs analysis document that we presented, and it outlined why we had identified these particular areas within the plan. And then what we did is we turned the plan over to superintendent and administration and school improvement team, and we said, modify, edit, change as you deem appropriate. Because we're, of course, using your data, and it aligns to your data, but I believe that administration, school improvement team, have a better finger on their pulse as to what do we identify, what did we expect would be in here. That's the value of a third party surveying and developing, because I have no skin in the game. Unfortunately, I'm going to be the messenger. Call me the messenger, I'm very comfortable with that. But I do want administration, school improvement team to have the ability to go into that plan and modify that plan as they deem appropriate. This is not, I have not modified this process or changed this process for Wahoo. We do not typically bring in a wealth of data to the board and take the board through that. What we do is we present in the nature that I am this evening. I certainly could present the needs analysis to you so that you have an idea of what is contained in that document. And then we will, and that's going to be coming here towards the end, then I will be talking to the board about identifying a date for a board retreat to begin talking about your guiding principle, the board governance, and talking about what you do to lean into what you identified as being areas of growth. Opening up communication, more efficient meetings, tying your board meetings, your board meeting agendas, your work actually to the priorities that are in the plan. So it's not unusual that we're not coming to the board and turning data over to the board in the fashion that maybe you're thinking. If you've experienced strategic planning before, this probably does feel differently.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like we're missing a really critical stakeholder group here. That needs assessment. I think we bring a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I know just having gone through lots of strategic planning
Sure.
in business, it's really hard to critically assess yourself.
It is, and that's
And-
the value of that third party, right?
Right, but then you give it to the administrators
Mhm.
and say, critically evaluate yourself. And the board has not had a voice in that
Uh-huh.
in any meaningful way. It just feels like there is a step in the process that is missing
Okay.
in terms of arriving at these should be our principles of focus.
Well, here's what I want you to hear me say. I am willing to walk alongside you. If we need to do it differently, if you wish to do it differently in Wahoo, we will have that conversation. And we can take a look at the needs analysis and give you that opportunity to review that and provide feedback. I have no problem with that
Do
whatsoever.
any school districts form a committee for this type of work?
Sometimes they do, not very often. Keep in mind that you as a board filled out a survey that you each received a link to. And then in addition to that, we did the community meeting and we did the strategic overview committee meeting. You each had the invitation and opportunity to participate in those meetings, where it gives you the opportunity to be at the table for a live meeting, since we don't do a lot of open mic type. It isn't an open mic meeting. It's very purposeful in the way that we structure it, because I don't agree with open mic. I'll be honest with you. We had a purpose. We brought your community together. I would not say that it was a robust turnout. Here's what I would say. That tells me your community is saying, keep doing what you're doing. I'm pretty comfortable with that. When you look at the surveys that we utilize with administration and teachers, we are diving deep into the day-to-day system, if you will. Our questions with our administrators and our teachers will be about, do you have adopted curriculum in, at minimum, your core subject areas? Do you have an instructional framework? If you have an instructional framework, is it aligned to the teacher evaluation? What kind of professional development is being provided? What kind of supports are being provided to your teachers to be able to cope with the student needs that you have? Are they equipped to deal and cope with student needs? I talked about the ELL population and the growth. Again, administration and teachers had that opportunity to say, no, we're not where we need to be in this particular area. Another thing that surfaces is your MTSS, which is your multi-tiered systems of support. I don't know how much you know about that as a board, but the one thing that I would say to you, and I don't say this to you just because I'm standing in front of you, because I don't always have a favorable message for all school districts. And that doesn't matter whether I'm talking about a Class A school district or a Class D2 school district. When we first started working with Kearney years ago, Dr. Edwards, I know that doesn't mean anything to you, but it means a lot to me. He was a gentleman that was in that district as a teacher. He was an administrator. He left the state of Nebraska, went to Georgia. He was an administrator, superintendent in Georgia, came back to Nebraska. And he came to our office for an orientation meeting. He's from Kearney Public Schools, Class A school district in the state of Nebraska. And he said to me, and I confide this in you, he said, Marcia, those administrators don't know what a strategic plan is. They've never had one. We've got to have a strategic plan. And my charge was, this was in July, and the charge was, I'm going to have a strategic plan by the end of this coming school year. He didn't let me start on that until February of that year, and they started the school year with a strategic plan. So here's where I'm going with what I'm going to say to you. Your district, and I know I'm asking you to, quote, trust me, but like I said, I will have that conversation about the needs analysis. But where you're at as a school district, you are in a good place. Do not take that for granted. So the example I just gave you is just because they're Kearney Public Schools and they're Class A school, did they have a system in place that ensured that they had the curriculum, they had the teacher evaluation, they had an instructional model? They didn't. They didn't. And it was like building a school district from ground zero up. And it has been that way. We can walk into a district and from the outside looking in, it can look amazing. And then when we get into the data, we find out they're not as amazing or as great as they appear to be. That isn't what happened in Wahoo. And unfortunately, it's one of those things that you have nothing to compare yourself to other than you come to these board meetings, you do your committee work, if you do committee work, and you learn about what are our needs and what are you as a board doing to support your administration to move the needle to improve education, to improve the success or the outcomes for all the students that you represent. And what did we find out? MTSS is good, but it is not where it needs to be. What did we find out? You have a growing ELL population, and we don't have the supports in place to provide those kiddos what they need. But we're also not equipping our staff to be able to provide the support that they need to be able to provide students. So are there areas of growth? Yes, there definitely are. But it is not as dire as some districts that we do see. And I know that that's difficult to accept as, trust me on this, I hear what you're saying. That's why we need to have that conversation about the needs analysis. And it'll be a deeper dive.
Yeah, and I'm speaking for myself, there's no doubt I think that we're good. I don't think good should ever be a
No.
place where
That's right.
you settle, right?
That's right.
I myself was remiss, I did not know that the board's only chance to have a meaningful voice in this was going, I wish somebody would have laid that out, because I had assumed we would be next in the process.
Okay.
Before we ever arrived at selecting
At this.
guiding principles.
Uh-huh.
So that's something just maybe to take away. Educate your board on what that process looks like.
Yes. And
because
periodic engagement is
Agreed,
the other
agreed.
thing that when we self-reflect, I would say that that's the one thing that I too have identified, and I value your interest in wanting more. And I'm willing to give you what you need to support you so that you feel like you do have that voice.
The only other thought, just based on what you said that there was not particularly robust community engagement, and looking at the results, I think we had a 21% participation rate from parents.
Which is pretty good in a district your size.
Is
I'm
it?
gonna tell
Okay,
you.
and that's
It
great,
is.
although I know your target was something closer to 50 or 60%.
We always, we put it there and we want it, but I'm going to tell you, we usually fall within the 20%. And what we do is we give all parents the opportunity to complete that survey if they have students in an elementary level, middle school, high school. They have the opportunity to fill that out multiple times. But it's not unusual that we fall within the 15 to 20%. Our non-negotiables, if you go back to that chart, 100% administration, 100% teachers. Board, I want 100% of the board, and then it will trickle down from that. And we were 3% short of your certified staff. We administer the certified staff, and the reason that we see the success rate for the teachers that we do and the administrators is we administer that survey during a professional development block of time. If we don't, you're going to see that number anywhere and everywhere. When administration will work with us to devote that time to it, start it, finish it, because through Qualtrics we know who's opened it, we know who started it, we know who hasn't opened it, and the only individuals that are getting a gentle reminder, which is a number of times, are going to be the individuals that haven't completed it. And they will have 10 days to do that.
So just to finish my thought on that, I think it's an unsafe assumption to say lack of community involvement means everybody supports what we're doing, right? I think that is a really dangerous assumption to make from lack of participation, either in a survey or a community kind of a setting.
I understand that, but I want to qualify the work that your superintendent did to communicate and distribute notice to your community that the community meeting was happening. Every community is different. Every community is different. They can come out of the woodwork, doesn't necessarily mean that things are bad, just because they do, but the fact that they had the opportunity and they did not show up, it wasn't for lack of effort to communicate it to your community. And so I have nothing else to go on other than the feedback that we received, which was very favorable during the meeting. And it doesn't mean that we have to stop there. Once the plan is actually adopted by administration, by the board, that's the board that does that, my apologies. Once the board adopts this, we begin year 1. Your agreement takes you through 5 years with the School Boards Association. So let's say that next year, administration says, we want to re-administer our teacher survey, our student survey. Could be a variety of different surveys. Great, we'll administer that. We're not going to charge you another dime. Annually, your district will go through what we call progress analysis, where administration is going to assess forward progress, what has been realized in those areas of top priority, student-centered learning, the others. That will be presented to the board throughout the year during board meetings. Your committee meetings will begin to take they will align to the priorities that are in the priority goals that the administration's working on with staff. So you're going to have multiple ways that you're going to be able to assess progress as it's reported to you as a board. At the conclusion of 1 year, we want the board, superintendent, administrators to convene a strategic overview committee meeting and update the community on the progress realized in those priorities. One other opportunity that you do have is to bring that strategic overview committee back in once the board has adopted it to share with them what is the outcome of the work that was involved in developing the plan. It's another way that you have a connection with your community. But we will do that for 5 years and provide that support. But keeping and fostering that good working relationship with your community once you have been through strategic planning. The other thing that we could do, Renee, if you're not satisfied with that, maybe we have some purposeful community engagement meetings. And we talk further about what the priorities are. Another thing that I would like to see the community do, and we talked with your superintendent about this when we did our district visit with your administrators and your school improvement team. We talked about where is the community of Wahoo? Do they have a strategic plan? What does your community understand about the needs that you're addressing in this school district? Who are the partners in this community that can be potentially stepping up to support improvement of how you're engaging L families, L students? There's a multitude of partners out there. We could do community alignment, and we could work with your city council or the community partners that exist here in the community to better inform them and engage them on the needs that have been identified in your strategic plan. And we'd be happy to do that. Now that is different than strategic planning, so I need to plant that seed, but there are other services available to your board, to this community, that we certainly can bring forward and have you consider if you want to do a better job of engaging your community. And maybe this is the seed, the fact that you now have this strategic plan that you can utilize as a dialogue or a point of conversation. We do have a plan. We are working a plan. We do have a vision for where we want to take this school district in the next 3 to 5 years. So that's an option.
Yeah, I think all great ideas. For me, I just really would like to see the data before we adopt
We will do that.
a plan here.
Let's go to the next slide. And I'm not going to read this to you. You don't need me to read anything to you. But that student-centered learning environment guiding principle, which was identified as number 1, really leans into that MTSS. MTSS in your school district, Brandon, it is K-12, correct? So that's something we learned. Here's something to measure that by. Rarely, if ever, as crazy as this is going to sound, is it at the secondary level. With fidelity, it is carried out at the elementary level. But school districts that have invested in expanding that with fidelity into middle school and the high school, there are very few districts that can, speak articulately about the success that they've derived, because that is not the norm. You have nothing to compare that to, but Mr. Lobley would be able to speak to that and validate that that's pretty accurate. Even in your ESU, if you would take all the school districts in your ESU, I highly doubt that there's too many of them that would be able to say K-12. And so we talk about that being utilized at all grade levels. Additionally, staffing shortages, specifically in paraprofessionals, key challenge as they hinder the inclusion of special ed students and limit the ability to differentiate instruction for all students. So that classroom teacher, the barriers, what's preventing it. Also the appropriate professional development, limited resources. Next. This is breaking down the actual framework. It is much more extensive from this, but the way that we do it in the board leadership department is we have an objective statement that is very specific, and then strategies within that guiding principle, and below that are performance indicators. We populate most strategies with 1 to 2 performance indicators, giving liberty, sometimes even 3, but we give liberty to administration to be able to go in, modify, edit, change those. Or if we have missed the mark in their estimation, then we give them that opportunity to be able to modify that as well. You'll notice in italics behind these strategies, academic learning and success, district resources, that means there's another guiding principle that this strategy aligns to. Okay? Very comprehensive. Cultural inclusion engagement, this is really where I talked about the L population and providing the appropriate supports. 80% of your staff reported not receiving training on the needs of students from low socioeconomic, so we're not just talking ELL, and racially diverse backgrounds. And then using academic data to support these students. The MTSS framework comes into this one as well. And then next, again, this is directly from the framework, which will be presented to the board. And then next, we have the board governance. Oh, sorry, district resources was third. Here's another thing that you hear me say. We maybe identified 3 priorities. Administration has the opportunity to say that isn't what we consider to be our number 1 priority. We're utilizing the data to say why we identified that, but we give full autonomy to administration to say, here's where we have been channeling our resources through our school improvement, through our budget, through ESU dollars, whatever the case may be. So they may come back and say, no, we want it to be something else. At this point in time, they have not changed the priorities. We were very much in alignment. We had some rich conversation, I would say, in that. And then we'll keep going, board governance. And so recalling you had that evaluation or online survey that you had the opportunity to fill out about the strategic planning process, but more importantly, your governance, the effectiveness of your governance. And so I am going to, what I am proposing with this guiding principle is that we schedule a board retreat to begin talking about this particular goal. What does that look like to you? If we were to develop what I want, or how I identify it as SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound, how we drill down within that goal and talk about what do we do as a school boards association board leadership to support you to grow in that governance role. So things that come to mind for me is truly the effectiveness of your board meetings, the design of your board meeting agenda, and then how you're aligning that to your strategic plan goal, your superintendent goals that you set through the evaluation, but more importantly then the board identifying goals that you're going to be tracking. Another thing that comes to mind for me is what is the effectiveness of your committee work? Do you meet in committees?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And then changing that narrative now in your committees. How can you align the work in your committees to the work that's going into the strategic plan? So that when your superintendent comes to you, a specific committee, whether it's your finance committee or personnel committee, whatever the different committees that you have assigned, how is he bringing initiatives from the strategic plan into those committee meetings and opening dialogue up with you as a committee, then to be able to come into a board meeting and make recommendations to support. It could be then through this board retreat that we're going to have, we start with the needs analysis. And we talk about what's in that needs analysis. What did we learn from all of the data, the extant data research, because there's a wealth of extant data where we're really looking at the demographics of your school district, the breakdown of the socioeconomic, the ELL population, your student scores, etc., the demographics of the community at large, and then drilling into the actual data that we collected and built into, it's an assessment of summary of the data that we collected through our surveys, is what it is.
So does this always make the list, or did the data say this needs to be on the list?
Board governance always makes the list. You are a driving force. You are either that support system to how we're growing and improving education in the district, or you're an obstacle. And how do we better engage you so that you understand here are our priorities, here are the supports that we need. What do you understand about the performance of the school district? Talking a little bit deeper into when you receive data from your administration, are you feeling equipped with appropriate questions? So what would you ask? What would you look for? More importantly, what data should you expect to be receiving that gives you some sense of, are we moving the needle? If this is the proficiency of our kids 2 years ago, how would we move the needle in proficiency? And keeping in mind, these are great conversations because, oh, by the way, we have that ELL population. A student enrolls in your school district today, and tomorrow they participate in NSCAS testing. We have no idea how that student is performing. We have no idea what education that child has. Can they even speak English? But how does that impact your outcomes on your NSCAS scores? And it can be one student. It can be a group of students. But having those purposeful conversations so that you understand at the board level, what are the challenges? What are the challenges? But more importantly, I'm talking about how there's need to be better. Let's celebrate the great things that we are doing. We haven't even talked about that. And I don't want to make it sound like your cup is half empty. It is not half empty. You have a lot to be proud of in this district, and we need to celebrate that as we're talking about what do we do to ensure that our students are being successful, but also our staff. So yes, unfortunately, board governance does land in every strategic plan. And it is important to me. Having been a board member, it's a very important component in the world of public education, is the Board of Education. And so this really takes you into it. Creating a system of governance that ensures the mission vision aligns to the goals, community expectations, and outcomes utilized to measure and improve learning for all students. Coming down, ensuring meetings are effective, efficient, orderly, focused on policy. Proper board governance, professional conduct, student learning, but more importantly, sustaining a professional and collaborative work relationship with your superintendent. How are you walking alongside in lockstep with your superintendent to understand, here's what we need from the board to ensure that we can equip our staff to be successful in addressing both socioeconomic but also ELL population. And what are the obstacles? Having been a school board member in Waverly, one of the greatest things for us is that we were that growing district. I know you experienced that here in Wahoo, but with growth, it just exacerbates your challenges, and it creates sometimes other challenges. So growth is not always amazing. Sometimes growth is like, it's not just space, but it's the challenges that come with the identity of the students in which the population that you're growing. Okay, and then your school improvement goal. All students will improve their reading skills in all content areas. That's a statewide goal. And the fact that you're on board, no pun intended, with that as a school district, that's important. That is very important. Next steps. It's really about coming together as a board, and I'm hearing you, and I want to be able to give you that opportunity to better understand what we brought away from our process. And I also would say to you that no two districts are alike. We don't have a carbon copy. We don't pull a strat plan off of the shelf and say this is going to work because this worked in Norse. This worked in wherever. It's important that you understand your data is what drives your plan. That's the integrity of our process. But I want you to be able to have buy-in if you will, into your plan and feel confident about your plan. And so what do I do to help you as a board reach that level of, okay, we understand, and we agree, and we support? What kind of questions have I created?
None for me.
Okay.
Well, I guess I do have one question. On the very first page, you had the different groups
Yes.
that you had pulled.
Uh-huh.
I suppose those are ones we just sent surveys to, right? So like the community leaders, I think, is one of them I attended.
The business leaders,
Yes.
yes, my apologies. It
Oh,
was, yes.
is that one too? Okay,
We do have business leaders, I
Okay.
apologize, that was not in here.
okay. I thought
Yes.
so.
That'd be the only other group. We involve the students. We did well with our students. Aside of the students that you do not have the opportunity to see, once we collect the data, especially from the students, our goal is we are in that data immediately. We sometimes will receive what we call red flag comments. If a student has self-harmed, contemplating self-harm, they feel bullied. It can even be stop and group that maybe articulates something of concern. I go directly to superintendent, and superintendent would be able to speak articulately about this to let them know that we do have some concerns. And then they're able to turn around. We have IP addresses. We do not share that information with anyone outside of the School Boards Association. We solely use that for the distribution of these surveys, and that is all we use that for. But that data is secure. And then, so then we follow up with superintendent, so he has the opportunity then to engage with administration or appropriate staff to address those concerns.
What's the purpose of strongly agree, yeah, agree or strongly disagree? Why do you have 5? Either you agree, you don't have an opinion, or you disagree. Why is one?
We do that because of how you score it.
So if I agree, but I strongly agree, why wouldn't it just be I agree?
Not always, no,
Okay.
because I may agree, but I don't strongly agree. I may feel that we touched upon this, but not at the level that I think that we should.
Okay.
And a lot of it's in the calculation of the outcome of the surveys, is why we do that. The other part of it is we don't want survey fatigue. If we put open-ended questions, a high percentage of open-ended questions, they're gonna say stick it in your ear. We wanna make it as easy as possible, but we're really looking for that qualitative, quantitative data where we have the ability to compare. And I'm going to tell you, that's common. It is so common that administration is saying, we're knocking it out of the park. This is where we're at. It's not unusual that you have a disconnect with teachers, where we're doing professional development. We have a purposeful plan that we go through every year as teachers, but they don't put the connection together that that's on that instructional model. I have a true story. Years ago, we had completed community engagement, and our community engagement was a little bit different at that time. And it's with a district that's not all that far from here. And the superintendent, I had gone in to review the results, and we had this gap, if you will, where administration said, absolutely, we have an instructional model. And the staff came back and it was really, really low. And there was a lot of frustration that was expressed by the superintendent. And she actually shared with me, she said, the worst part about it was, we have been providing this professional development, and my husband is a teacher in this district, and he couldn't even make the connection that that was our instructional model. And so it is one of those things. Another thing that we talk about, it's not unusual for it to show up, is onboarding and mentoring programs for your staff. When you think about a new teacher walking into your district, and if you did not have adopted curriculum, this is staggering when you think about it. I'm an elementary teacher. I'm brand new in this district. If your district did not have curriculum and you handed him a computer and a fob and you say, good luck, hope things go well for you, you're sending that teacher into that classroom to teach anything they want to. The value of having adopted curriculum and not a textbook is far-reaching. But I'm going to tell you that there's too many school districts in the state of Nebraska. On average, we do 15 to 20 strat plans a year. I'm going to say the highest percentage of that number, they're not going to have adopted curriculum. And you can think that I am pulling your leg when I tell you that. It's a fact. Do not take it for granted, the great things that are happening in this district. That is not by chance. That is a result of leadership. So that's what strat planning does for you. It pulls back that veil for you as a board, for you as a community, for your parents, and it says, okay, here's where we're at, but here's where we're going. But we've got some things that we've got to work on in order to ensure that our kids are successful. And my challenge to you as a board is, if you are 63% proficient, what are you doing for that 37% that isn't? And what kind of questions are you asking? What are we doing? And how are you tracking the progress of what your administration's bringing to you and saying, this is what we're trying to do. This is where we're trying to bring that in. But when we talk about the ELL population, paras, that's staggering. Special education paras, again, think about the success of those students when they don't have the supports that they need. But you're not alone in that regard. That's a shortage. Any other questions? I don't want to, I probably overstayed my welcome even where I'm at. But I want to answer your question.
Next steps.
For me, I really want to see the data. I want to
Okay.
be bought in, but I need to see the data.
You got it?
Yeah, so the needs assessment, how we arrived here would be really, really helpful.
Renee, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to tell you next steps. We need to get a date on the calendar so that we can come back, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to put this plan on hold, because it would be my assumption that administration is going to want to start working on this as soon as this summer. Another thing that I'm going to tell you, and then I promise I really will stop, is that the cooperation that we had from your superintendent, your administration, was second to none. When we gave you a range, which we do when we do strategic planning, we give you a low and we give you a high. And the high is, we have problems getting things scheduled in this district, we're probably going to charge you the high. We didn't have problems scheduling things in your district, and sometimes it is just brutal, but it was a joy working with your district. So thank you for that.
So the earliest we could get back together is the week of June 2nd, as far as advertising. The 2nd is a Monday.
Can the information just be disseminated, so do we have to get in a room to see the data?
Yes.
Why?
Because I want to be able to explain it to you.
Well,
If I hand you something and you read it, does that allow you to ask questions or lead to assumptions? We presented it that way to your administrators. We didn't just send it to them and say, here, it's yours. I want to be able to support what we did, and I want you to be able to have that ability. I would bring in team members with me, and you would have the opportunity to speak to those individuals that actually were in the data.
I would love that, but again, this is their full-time job, it is not our full-time job. So I really want to be able to review the data, come prepared with the questions so we have the right people to answer those.
Okay.
Could we put together a committee that would be interested in doing that?
Committee wouldn't require advertising.
Yeah.
Correct.
I guess the question then becomes, who wants to see the data and be involved? If it's more than 3, then it needs to be the board. If it's 3 or less, then it doesn't need to be the full board. I just don't know who has an interest in seeing the data.
Do you 3 want it?
Well, I'm gone from the 19th to the 20th of June, so that limits my availability for a meeting if we're gonna do it in those dates, but
If Bob wants to sit on it, I have no problem. I trust you guys on that committee.
May 19th.
I said, June, June 9th to the 19th.
Oh, you're gone.
Yeah.
And that's where, obviously, summer's a tough time to schedule.
Yeah.
That's
Six
where
of
I
us.
think it would be really helpful to just see the data and be able to ask questions afterwards on a date we could
Yeah.
agree upon.
I guess the question we're asking is,
I like the committee idea.
Yeah, me too.
I guess the question though, if the committee gets the data, why can't all 6 of us have the data just to look at it? And we entertain our own questions. If we do get them back, they can be the, obviously get together.
Vet it.
The rest of us can at least vet it and let's see what we like and we don't like. I mean, there's things I can just look at our mission statement. Where do we come up with those 2 mission statements? Those are things that,
Strategic Overview Committee did that.
yeah.
You want to just send them the needs analysis and let them?
I can.
Okay.
But, and then what? Then we come back to the June meeting?
I think it's important that somewhere we have the opportunity to be able to be responsive to you.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. So we'd have to advertise anything before our June meeting if we wanted to just have a workshop for it. So you're back the 19th.
Mhm.
So anybody that last week in June?
Or again, maybe we could disseminate the information. Let's see who has questions. Again,
If any, yeah.
if it's 3 or less, we could not have the need for advertising and we could have more flexibility in terms of setting up a Zoom meeting versus having to get
Oh, true.
in a room together. But if there's 4 or more,
Then we'd have to have a,
then we would
that's
need
good,
that
that's a good
meeting.
idea, that's a good idea.
Yep, we
I'm
can
good
do
with
that.
Can we try that and see
Yeah.
what level of input everybody wants?
I'm good with that.
That gives a little bit of flexibility, and since it's that committee, we could meet anytime.
Right.
So even as early as next week, you want to come together, we'll make that happen.
I think that's great.
Okay?
I appreciate that.
Okay, all right. So, you are so welcome.
Thank you
Thanks for
very much.
having me, yes. And here's the thing that I want to say to you. Pick up the phone, call me, text me, email me. Superintendent will share my contact information. Actually, I have my business cards, I will leave this. You have questions, don't hesitate, reach out. You each have the same equal access to me that superintendent, board president does. And so I would value the opportunity to be able to engage you and try to equip you with the information that you need to feel confident in what it is that we're presenting to you.
Thank you very much.
You are so welcome.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Moving on, 4.2 Treasurer's Report, all funds are listed there for your review. 4.3 Policy Review 4000 Series, Brandon.
Okay, this is closing out our 4000 series. I've put a couple notes in there. 4051, use of social media, any social, school-affiliated social media pages. So if we have anybody that, Wahoo Wrestling, Wahoo Robotics, anybody that even puts up a front that they are school-affiliated, that's got to be registered with administration. Those accounts are not personal, thus do not have the same First Amendment protections. 4054, reporting child abuse. All employees are considered reporters. If reasonable cause to believe, the employee shall, and this is right out of the policy, employee shall report to DHHS and the building principals. Expected contents of the report are outlined in policy. The principals can help them through that process, as well as the principal probably being a reporter as well. For the most part, everything else is pretty straightforward in the 4000s. Did anybody have questions on those policies attached? Okay.
4.4, construction updates and questions.
OAC meeting today. Lots of notes, I'm gonna be brief. The cafeteria, they are taking out that white LVT and they're replacing it with the gray. Hopefully that takes place the end of June. It's gotta come from overseas. It's being produced the 1st of June. Hopefully we see that mid to late June, and then they'll get it put in as soon as it shows up. Practice field, if you drove by on Hackberry, they completely shaved it off, regraded it a 3rd time. We walked it before they put sod down. It's what it was supposed to be. Hopefully that sod takes.
What about the irrigation?
Irrigation's in.
What's
It was
in?
unchanged?
No,
No, they have,
it's hooked to a new meter through the city as opposed to the fire hydrant that it was running before. So it is zoned, it is correct, it's ready to roll.
they got on that.
Polished concrete, that's gonna be a little bit of a conversation. I sent some information out as far as a little bit deeper grind on the hallway concrete. That cannot go on upstairs. I was led to believe that the science classroom that we walked through with Mr. Tomjack, they were gonna grind it down. They can't do it because of mesh in the concrete and because it's on steel decking, which is more unstable. So unbeknownst to me, they're putting epoxy in Mr. Tomjack's room. That is on the concrete people. On the first floor, there may be discussion because that grind is an expensive process as to how much they take on versus how much we're expected to take on. I've got no more information other than a brief conversation today, which was a little bit out of the blue. On the second floor, as far as that hallway thoroughfare, the conversation tilted, and again, it was brief, tilted towards maybe it's a credit back to the district, and we live with what we've got because they don't know that they have a solution. Even those epoxy strips that I showed you outside the concession stand, they agreed those are not solutions either. So as far as the concrete, that's, be patient with me, that's a work in progress. They've got to pull out areas of the main drive in front of the high school. I've told you that it's pretty wavy out there. That'll take place in the summer at some point in time. They're trying to coordinate the panels that they take out there with the pouring of the tray on the south end of this parking lot here. So they have all the concrete on site at one time and then they knock it out. We don't want to say this out loud. Right now the elevator is about 2 weeks behind. That's about all I got there. Things that I asked them on, so we're still talking about replacement carpet around the middle school offices, so it coordinates with the pod and the new carpet that went in the classrooms, working through that process. I did today, I got like 3 or 4 PCOs or PCCOs that I've got to send out. One of those is to refinish the doors and trim around the old doors. The solution that they have is to basically sand them down and paint them the same color that the trim would be, just because they can't go back with the same wood finish. They don't have that capability. That's the solution I've got. I will send that to you and you guys can take a peek. Up top, Justin Zizit from Tillotson does all our roof checks. He had some concerns with the vent caps they put on the roof, like they might not be appropriate. I sent those pictures to Brian. He's helping us through that. And parking lot striping, if you've looked in the new lots, that striping is already stripping away. I asked what their plan was for the new parking lot when it gets striped, as well as replacing this. And they're doing a product review, and then they'll give me more information when they have it. Questions about construction?
HVAC all, everything zoned, all ready to go?
No.
Okay.
In process.
Okay.
We have SES as part of the construction. They are the commissioning agent. It's been a slow process. because you've got mechanical sales, you've got SES, you've got Johnson Controls, and you've got, I forgot the last company's name. I apologize. But there's 4 different entities that are involved in it, and when something goes wrong, there's a little bit of finger pointing, and SES got to figure it out.
Okay.
So they've been really good to work with, SES on that end. It's just slower than they want.
Okay.
What's our new final completion date?
It's still 8/1, they think they can get caught up. They just said today they were probably 2 weeks behind on the elevator.
Overall,
Overall, we're not changing.
No, I was just gonna say final, as in everything is punched, we've signed off on everything, it's
Yes.
A1.
8/1 as of right now.
continue to make satisfactory progress.
Yes. I only say that hesitantly because there's a lot to do in fixing stuff, but most of it can't be done until we get people out of the way for the summer.
Yep.
So ask me at the end of June, I'll have a lot better idea.
Right, asked you before.
Probably. Other items?
Alright, moving on, administrative reports. Reports were attached, they are there for your review. Brandon?
Mine's attached, anybody got questions? Some legislation. Not going to directly impact the board, but does impact the district. One I'm gonna highlight is retirement. So the state had a budget shortfall, they're trying to find ways to make up that difference. I had informed you about 640, whatever it was, the retirement bill, which if the retirement fund is funded at such and such a percent, it sets percentages for employee, employer, and state. Right now, it's just under 100%, which means next year, the employee rate goes from like 9.7 to 8. So that's money back in the employee pocket, which is a positive. The employer rate comes down similarly. The state rate comes down about 60%. And so what they said is about the time insurance comes out, 1st of November each year, they will also have an actuarial report on what to expect for the retirement fund for the following year to set that rate. I've informed WEA about this process. Given fluidity, it was strictly an informative thing and not a negotiation thing. Because when you look at total package, the amount of that retirement comes down, but that's more money going back in their pocket that's getting returned. So just how we evaluate and utilize that in the fall, I don't know yet because it's too new.
And this is still up for consideration, right?
No, this is done.
It is done.
Alyssa got a report today from NPERS saying this is what it is for next year.
Could you put some numbers to that and sort of make that all make sense?
As far as,
What it means and how, like, give us an example of this is what it means to the school district? Because there our number comes
Yep.
down, but
If you can give me just a second, I can pull it up. So for example, this year, and I'm gonna talk certificated staff to begin with, which I realize is just a snapshot, but it gives you an apples to apples that I can provide in pretty quick order. So this year, with retirement where it is, that cost for certificated staff alone is $570,000.
Okay.
If we move that down to.
That's the school district's contribution.
Right.
570.
So if we move that down, it becomes 466.
Okay. And then what's the state?
So the state overall, right now, they're expected to put in 2%. Next year, that number is going to be 0.7%. I would have to go back and look at the number. It's in the 9
Yeah.
figures that it says the state.
retired teachers are all worried about it. 'Cause that's a lower, I just talked to a couple the other day about it, and they were like, ooh, that's gonna change. Really
Okay.
hard.
Thank you.
Yeah. As I get more information, I'll share it. This is really new, so I'm learning as we go. Other than that, you got my report.
Thank you, Brandon. 4.6, communications, I didn't see anything attached. Audience comments. Yeah, okay. And 4.8, board committee reports, any committees that met? Moving on, 5.1, action items, discuss, consider, and take any necessary action to approve the superintendent's negotiating contract for nutritional services.
So I shared information with you guys. We got RFPs or responses back from 2 different companies. Unknown to me, we actually had the ability to request a best and final offer to improve that price point. Those are due Wednesday. So we kind of have 2 options as I laid out in that email. One would be to bring the board back in a special board meeting to do that and only that, once we get those responses back. Or I think you have the ability to authorize me to negotiate and execute a contract on behalf of the board based on the feedback, on the responses that we get back. I have one back. I do not have the other back. I won't say which is which, but the one that I did get back, I would call a lot better, if not significantly better. So that's up to you guys how you want to move it forward. I will do whatever you want me to do.
My recommendation is let him handle it.
Brandon, were they both look like good companies who
Yes.
can meet our needs?
They would both serve our needs.
One's got more longevity.
One has more longevity experience, especially in the state of Nebraska. Both emphasize wanting to hire the people in place first before trying to move outside. They both have expanded menus. They both want to work with the school. I would say comparable responses. In talking to MDE, typically the tipping point is that price or that guaranteed return in almost every one of them that they do, and that would be the same case here.
And that guaranteed return goes into what fund?
Back into school nutrition, which can then be used to update equipment. It can be used to do work within the kitchen, anything under that school nutrition umbrella.
Right.
Can we use that for retaining bonuses for the employees?
I would, they're not our employees now.
They're no longer employees.
But constantly improving, like investing in new
Equipment would be
equipment
great.
Yes.
would be
Quality, yeah, I agree.
absolutely fantastic.
Which we would get extra guidance from the company knowing
What they want,
what
they can
what
use.
would be appropriate in the kitchen.
Which of the 2, not naming them, has more of a presence in Nebraska? Was it pretty comparable to the two that are?
No, so one of them is kind of housed out of South Dakota but has a large Nebraska footprint. The other one is housed more in the south and hits kind of Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma.
Doesn't have much in Nebraska.
Not, has some, not as much.
But one is more Nebraska
Correct.
schools.
But if only one of them had gotten us a bid, you probably would have recommended that we take either one of them. Right?
Yes, I think we could recommend either one as being viable.
So I would say, I don't know, do you need a motion? Yeah, so I would move that you negotiate the best price and execute a contract with the most financially sound contract.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Discussion. Alyssa?
Brad,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes,
Brett,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
5.2, discuss, consider, and take any necessary action to approve the purchase of a lawnmower from Ty's Outdoor Power and Service. Brandon?
Cohen's been doing some research, getting an upgraded mower. We absolutely have a need. We have 2 grasshopper mowers that he puts together with some baling wire and some elbow grease, but they work as a substitute mower. Right now they're our primary mower. He did a lot of research. What he found based on the engine type, body durability, and ride was this steel motor, or this steel mower from Tice Outdoor Power. And I apologize in the rationale, I did not update to Tice Outdoor Power. It's different than the original mower that I had sent to you, but the price is correct and the motion is correct.
Is this coming out of depreciation fund?
This will come out of general.
I'd move to approve the purchase of the steel mower for $13,999.
Second that.
Discussion?
This is no sell point, but I saw him out here this weekend mowing on Saturday, and he said he had mowed on Saturday because it takes so long. And I said, well, let me just, show me what's wrong with this mower. Look at it, and he pointed about 3 or 4 things that just, at any point could just.
Those will be good for like the islands and the areas in front of the school, but the large areas, this one's gonna get done a lot faster.
Any more discussion? Melissa?
Di,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Fred,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
What?
You can table the next.
Have you even gotten?
Go ahead with 5.2 and then I'll hit 5.3.
We already did that too.
5.3, we're gonna.
Or sorry, 5.3 and 5.4.
We will, is there, we don't have to make a motion, we're gonna table 5.3, 5.4.
Real quick on 5.4, I think Brian is understanding of expectation, and he's doing a little of this with his accounting department, because we talked Wednesday, I think, and just said, hey, where's this at? And he goes, I've expressed what the board expectation is and what's gonna happen if we don't have it to accounting over and over again. I'm not going to send you anything, move on, we'll do it next month. So, they're fully aware.
Nothing on 5.5, items for next regular meeting.
Strategic plan?
You should have policy introduction, hopefully from this session, updates from KSB, which will include handbook. We'll also revisit the preschool policy. I hope to have some numbers in front of you for classified and substitute teacher rates.
And probably, information on RFP.
Yes.
Just to look at who it is, and what the numbers are. Anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Yep. Yeah. Josh, never mind. Close that camera.
That was,
Thank you.
where did I see you yesterday?